Sammy Taormina on Orion Television. I'd like to welcome those watching on the local voice on SoundCloud and those watching Orion Television. Let's look at this week around the sports docket. Basketball season is already underway. We're going to talk about some teams that have been having my eye, and then a couple of teams that are just really, been going like, what are you doing to me lately? So we're going to look at those type of teams to start off here. We're going to start off with the boys game first. Obviously, the boys have been starting off longer than the girls. So we're going to talk about the boys first, and we're going to talk about the girls. And really, when you look at the team that a lot of people have been talking about around the league, it's been Oxford. And Oxford's a team that right now they sit at 3-0. But when you look at those wins that they have, obviously they knocked off, Davison. Now, Davison's not the same team they used to be after what happened with their they had like several players transfer out of Davison. Then they played, Emily, and then they played Grosse Pointe North the other night in the D-Zone Classic. I got to remember the third one. But when I look at Oxford, people are going to say, well, you look at this Oxford team, they're clicking on all cylinders. Shout out to Jake Champagne for scoring I think his 1,100 career point at Oxford. Congratulations to him. So when I look at Coach Joe Fedorik's team, clicking on all cylinders, but the schedule really hasn't been that impressive. And the reason why I say this is, the schedule really hasn't been, to that of, I will be curious to see how this team looks when they have to play their league schedule. I know they got Harper Woods on Tuesday night. They got Livonia Stevenson coming up in the OAA MAC, in the OAA KLA Challenge, which I'm not sold on Livonia Stevenson, really not. So the Harper Woods game, you kind of really, could that be an indicator? I don't know. I think the game January 3rd could be when they play Lake Orion. That could be the indicator. Now, you look at a team like Lake Orion is sitting at 0-3 right now, but Lake Orion's played a really tough schedule. I mean, when I look at the Dragons, they have played a really, really tough schedule. I mean, they played Adams, they played Clarkston, and then they played Macomb, Dakota. Remember, those three teams are really good teams this year. And, and if you put Oxford and you make them play that schedule, it would not surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if they went 0-3 with that schedule that Lake Orion had. If Oxford had Lake Orion's not conference. So really, with Oxford, obviously they played Jake Champagne. They had 14 threes in a game, which ended up being the school record. I think that was against Davison. I'm not sure. No, it was against New Baltimore Anchor Bay. So when I look at Oxford, you kind of really, there's still a lot of questions with Oxford. There is. But right now they're off to a good start. They're clicking on all cylinders. But I just have not been sold on the schedule that they've been playing. I mean, you really look at the schedule they've had, really hasn't been that impressive when I look at the schedule and that Oxford's had. So, right now for them, they're clicking, but I think if they played the likes of a Clarkston or a Macomb, Dakota, I think that's a different outcome, or anybody in the red. I think that's a different outcome for Oxford because, and I really think, I would be curious to see how they would match up against the red. I really would be with this senior heavy team. And then also a team I'd be very curious to see how they match up with Grand Blanc because they're going to see Grand Blanc in the district. I mean, they're really going to see him. But, and I think that's where the test would be for me with Oxford is Lake Orion and then obviously the Red. And I think those are the teams that you really have to look at when I look at the Wildcats is, does this team match up with, with anybody in the Red, and then also a Grand Blanc? If they do in the postseason, I think it would be really, really impressive. But we'll see. I mean, we're gonna see. I mean, because league play starts. And there's some teams that are in some really unusual spots right now. I mean, you look at the OAA Blue. I mean, you look at what the Blue has done. Stony Creek. I mean, they're a team that has been really impressive. I mean, they played a tough schedule. I mean, yeah, they sit 2-1. I mean, they had a tough one with Waterford Mott, but they shocked Adams. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But if Oxford had Stony Creek's schedule, I think they would be, honestly, 1-2. I think it would be. Because I don't think this team matches up with Adams. I don't think this team matches up with, I think they beat Utica. I think they're a better team than Utica. And then I don't think they beat Waterford Mott. So, so when I look at Oxford, it's just, when I look at them, it's the schedule. You know what I mean? It's the schedule hasn't been that impressive with them. And I look at people like Stu Carlton of the D-Zone, and he's already hyped them up, got them around the 25 spot. But I just think there's so many questions with Oxford. There's a ton of them. And there's a lot of them. When you look at this team, how do they match up against the Red? How do they match up against Lake Orion? I mean, Lake Orion's had Oxford's number. I mean, yeah, Lake Orion's 1-3, but Lake Orion's played a nightmarish schedule. So when I look at the eyeball test right now, if I had to do my rankings right now, I mean, yes, Oxford's 3-0. They've made a statement. They've arrived. But honestly, right now, I would still rank Lake Orion and Stony Creek even ahead of Oxford because of that schedule. It's because of the strength of schedule component. That's really what it is. I mean, and I think that's the issue that I have with Oxford right now. The reason for their start is because of the strength of schedule component. So, I mean, yeah, they're off to a good start. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they got a senior heavy team, but I think the schedule to me has been the difference maker when I look at Oxford. It really has. So obviously now you can't control how others perform. You can't control that. But I just think right now, if I had to rank Oxford where they're at right now, I mean, basically right now in the 7-8 range because of the strength of schedule component. And I think that's really what it is right now. Albeit they still got to play teams in the red. Now they're in the white this year. So they're going to have some challenges. I think Troy's going to be a team that could challenge them. I definitely know Lake Orion will. So when I look at strength schedule, that's going to be the key for Oxford is how's that schedule going to look? Are they going to be battle tested enough? I mean, there's just so many questions for Coach Joe Fetchork's team. I mean, there's just so many questions. So, but Oxford's off to a really good start, but I just need to break this team down and, and say, well, when you look at Oxford, I want to see this team play Clarkston. I want to see this team play North Farmington. I want to see this team play Adams. I want to see them play a West Bloomfield or Groves. Because those teams, and even Lake Orion, I think Lake Orion in their division. I mean, you look at the schedule component, that's really where you're going to know if you're for real or not. And I think that's been the biggest question that I have with Oxford all year long is how is the schedule going to, it'll get you wins, but the question is, are you getting yourself any better? I mean, that's the question I have with Oxford is, when you look at the teams that have vicious schedules, I mean, you look at teams that are 0-3 right now. Lake Orion and Ferndale, perfect examples of this. Both teams have played Murder's Row of a schedule. I mean, they played Murder's Row. I mean, Ferndale's played, Warranty South. They played some other teams that are tough, but they're 0-3 right now. And then you look at Lake Orion, they played Adams, they played Clarkston, and they played Macomb, Dakota. So those are three teams that are not easy teams. And yet Lake Orion, they still got to play Canton, they got to play Novi. And those are difficult matchups for Lake Orion. So, so there's a lot of difficult matchups ahead for the Dragons. But when I look back to Oxford, I just think right now the schedule, the non-conference schedule, I just don't know right now where to rank Oxford. I just don't know how to rank them. I mean, right now I would have to say the red, most of the red, I would have most of the red on top of Oxford, and then I would also have Lake Orion ahead of Oxford, and maybe Troy right now. I mean, but you got to get credit where credit's due with Oxford. I mean, they're winning the games they're supposed to. So there's still a lot of questions when I look at Oxford. There really is, and and obviously the play of Jake Champagne, Luke Stoffen, Brady Ellings really played well. I mean, obviously the 14 threes. I mean, they're out to a hot start. Don't get me wrong. They're out to a hot start. But there's just so many questions when I look at Oxford. You know what I mean? So there's just so many questions that, I really can't put this team right now ahead of the mentioned teams, Lake Orion or Troy right now. And then even some teams in blue, Stony Creek, you know what I mean? Stony Creek, they're up. They're 2-1 right now, and they're coming off an upset win against Rochester Adams. I mean, they didn't just beat Adams. They just beat them by 16. So, so I think it'll be interesting to see how it goes. It'll be very interesting to see how things go, and I think we're going to see what happens. So, we'll see. Let's go to, let's look at Stony Creek now. I mean, this is a team that I really want to look at. And it looks like the Cougars have something here. It really looks like Coach Jeff Owen's team has something. And the game against Adams, and I want to look at that third quarter of that Adams game where they outscored them 22-4 in the third quarter. I mean, obviously Tyree Smith had a monster game. 6 threes, 22 points. They did a really good job. They got Lewis. They got Marcy on the foul trouble. They had another young man. Who went off for. They had another young man who went off as well. I think it was Quentin Redendi. He had 20 points for Stony Creek. I mean, so when I look at the Cougars, they're starting to turn things around a little bit. And that's a good sign if you're Coach Jeff Owen. That really is a great sign if you're Stony Creek. I mean, finally, this could be the team that might be the best team in Rochester. And that says something, considering where this team's been the last 2 years. I mean, when you look at Stony Creek, you look at the transition period from Coach Steve Norgrove to Jeff Owen, it was a really rocky transition period. It was really rocky. I mean, 2 years ago, they really struggled despite having a lot of senior experience. Last year, they really struggled. This team had 9 wins in the last 2 years. Now you're sitting at 2-1. Only lost to Waterford Mott. Now, I do got some questions about that game. But when I look at the game against Adams, I really think that could be a program changer for several reasons. Because I think when I look at Stony Creek, they've got players who can play. They got a lot of football kids who came out and played. I know a lot of those kids extremely well. Spencer Beekman's really played well in the interior. You look at what he's done. He's a multi-sport athlete, obviously football. Very good shot putter. All-state thrower, by the way. Really, and also he's one of the nicest kids you ever meet. That's how I view Spencer Beekman. One of the nicest kids you're ever going to meet. I really think when you look at Stony Creek, it looks like they're starting to turn things around a little bit. It was something that I looked at heading into the year, and I'll admit this. The last 2 years I had Stony Creek favored to win the Blue this year. Now, this year, I do not, but they could surprise me. They could really surprise me. And the way that team played against Adams, holding a very high-octane Adams offense to 4 points in the second and the third quarter, that says a lot about where that team, they have grown up. They have grown. And that is a good sign. And they had to survive Utica. It's by having a 13-point lead. But you know what? For Stony Creek, sitting at 2-1 right now, much better place. They're in a much better place. And I really like where this team's been going. Could this team make some noise in the Blue this year? Absolutely they can. It's just they just got to stay the course. If Stony Creek can stay the course, to me, this might be the best team in Rochester. And that says something. Considering you look at with Adams, the success that they've had, Rochester's a team that's on the way up. Despite their 10-point loss on Saturday to Macomb Last Cruise North. But when I look at Stony Creek, this is a team that really is on the upswing. And this is a team that really can make some noise going forward. I think Stony Creek could be a very dangerous team come March. I think they could be really dangerous. Right now, if I had to do that district right now, I would have to say, right now, I would have to put Stony Creek as the favorite. Despite the win against Adams. Even though people at Adams are going to say, well, Adams is going to be a team that, once they get their act together, once they get things fixed, they got a tough schedule, and they play in the red. But Stony Creek, they beat them. They beat them. I know it's always hard to beat a team twice. But, especially in the postseason. But I think Stony Creek right now is leaps and bounds better than they were last season. And that says a lot. And I think a lot of that mostly is because of the play of Tyree Smith. They've had others who stepped up. They've gotten their play. Their defense has been really good. They're scrapping. This team, they're a scary group. Stony Creek's they're the real deal. They are the real deal. So, we'll see what happens. Another team that's had my eye has been Bloomfield Hills. When I look at the Blackhawks, they were absolutely impressive against Troy. They had a really tough fight with Seaholm. Their first game of the year. They had a really tough fight. But then what they did to Troy was just absolutely incredible. For Coach Brian Canfield and this team, that says a lot to where they've been. Last season, this team really struggled. Now, obviously, you have Deron Mason. You got Carter Canfield. You got there's some others in there. I can't think of their names right now. But there's still a big concern with me when I look at Bloomfield Hills, particularly in the interior. There really is. So when I look at Bloomfield Hills, I think this team can really make some noise in this division. I just think they can. When I look at this team, and, they've got scores everywhere. They've got stars. They've really improved under Coach Brian Canfield. They've really improved. What they did to Troy on the road in their house was just incredible. Impressive. I mean, Troy really had to, they had them down 20. They had them down by 20 at one point. They put up 78 on them. That's impressive. Especially with the team that has Mason Parker on them. They have Mason Parker on that team. That's insane. That is insane. For them to go in there and win by 10, put up 78 points, it's just incredible. I got to give props to Coach Brian Canfield and his team. Playing really well right now. Playing really well. And then another team I've been impressed with has been Farmington. Farmington's been a team that, you look at what Coach Byron Johnson's done with them. You look at what they've done. Last year was a struggle. This year, this offseason, they had so much turnover from last year. It's a completely different Farmington team. Now, I'm saying this team might be better than last year. And here's why. This team can play team basketball. This team's had program strength. This team's had, they played as a unit. They play as one unit. Their only loss is to North Farmington. We lost that game by 3. And when I look at Farmington, they've got multiple players contributing. They had a buzzer beater against Redford Thurston. Ended up winning that one 43-40. Yeah, Redford Thurston or Redford Union. I got to search that up. I really do. So I apologize if I messed up the Redford team. I apologize. But when I look at Farmington right now, and this team, and I talked to Coach Johnson during media day. I talked to him. He said, don't sleep on us. Don't sleep on us. And I think when I look at Farmington right now in the white, do I think, could they give a team like Lake Orion and Oxford problems? I don't know about that yet. I think if they play Troy, I think they do give them problems. I think they do give Lake Orion and Oxford problems. I do. So when I look at Farmington right now, do I think this team win a division? I don't know. Probably not, but you never know. Farmington is a team that can give teams problems. They gave North Farmington everything they can handle. Had not been for a couple of turnovers and a terrible first half. You know what? Farmington probably wins that game. They probably win that game. And there's a real possibility they could see North Farmington again in the playoffs. They could see them again. Just imagine how that would be. Just imagine how crazy that would be. Would be insane. Would it be absolutely insane if those two teams played each other? That would be just insane. So Farmington right now is a team that really's been on my radar. The way that they've been playing. So those are some teams that really have been on my radar. But Farmington, people said, don't sleep on them. Don't sleep on them. I haven't been since the start of the year. I really haven't been. But It'll be interesting to see how they do in the white. It'd be really interesting to see how they would do against the Lake Orion and Oxford, against Troy, because there are some good games on the docket in that division. Really is. And then there's another team I've been impressed with, and that's Ferndale University. Now, people say, well, why the Eagles? Why the Rising Eagles? The way that they've got things turned around a little bit over there. And Coach Josh Nix has done a really nice job with that team. He's done a really, really nice job. Off to a 2-0 start. You got to give Coach Nix a lot of credit for what they've done. Ferndale University is the smallest school in the OAA. They are one of the smallest enrolled schools. And people say, well, if Ferndale they're in D2. Obviously, you look at them and Harper Woods. But Ferndale University, they've really played well early. They usually have a tough time against some of the bigger schools within the area. But they've managed to win some tight games, and they've really turned things around over there. And I think that says a lot. I think they've found a chemistry where they can turn things around, where they can really do some damage. And I think they can really make some noise. So when I look at Ferndale University, they're going to be fine. I think they're going to be okay. I just think when I look at the Eagles, they're going to be fine. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to see how it goes. We're going to see how things go with them. And, and I really like the direction that Coach Josh Nix has done with that program. He's done a really nice job with them. So, credit where credit's due. Got to give University a lot of credit. I know a lot of people predicted Ferndale University to finish last this year in the blue. But they could surprise some people. They could really, really surprise some people coming into the year. They could really, really surprise some people. Teams, that I've been a little disappointed with to start the year. I'm going to give Lake Orion and Ferndale both passes. They played really tough schedules. Lake Orion, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, they played Adams, they played Clarkston, and they played Macomb, Dakota. Ferndale, they always play a difficult schedule. They just played Warren De La Salle recently and lost by 1. Warren De La Salle has been a really odd team to figure out. They played Groves earlier in the year. They lost to Groves. So this is probably the first time, I think, in a long time that Warren De La Salle's lost to Groves, not only in basketball, but also in football as well. So that says a lot right there. So Groves right now is a team that's clicking on all cylinders right now. But I think the key is when you question Groves, that's going to be in the postseason. That's going to be a team that, you got to look at. Is obviously Groves right now. They're clicking on all cylinders. Coach Mark West has done a really nice job with that team. They got a lot of experience. So Groves right now is a team that I think could really well be on their way to greater things. So we'll see. Clarkson right now is another team. They're off to a 2-0 start. But we'll see with Clarkson. We're going to see with them. I've been disappointed. My biggest disappointments right now, I would say right now, if I had to pick a team that I've been kind of disappointed with to start the year, I would say honestly, and I think it'd be crazy, but I would say Troy Athens. Yes, they went through a coaching transition from Coach Dave Scott to Mitchell Rustino. They really have not. And I knew they were going to be young. But no, I take that back. Troy Athens. I take it back with Troy Athens. I mean, I would say one of my disappointments this year has been Royal Oak. I really look at Royal Oak. I thought, coming into the year, they would, take that next step. But they ran the Massachusetts Lampier, lost by 1 point, which was stunning. I couldn't believe they lost that one to Lampier. Now, Lampier, I knew they were going to be down a little bit. They were going to be down. When I look at Royal Oak, now they're going to, they had an impressive win against Holly. But I really thought, that they would turn the corner. But then again, when you look at Royal Oak's case, it's always been, Royal Oak's always been a weird team to figure out when it comes to consistency. Really hasn't, I really can't judge them yet. I can't judge a Berkeley. I know Harper Woods had a big win the other night. So really, it's kind of like you're still early in the process. You're still early in the game. There's some things that teams can figure out. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But some teams that I've been really impressed with, some teams that I've been just going like, what are you doing lately? So we'll see how it goes. We'll see. So when I look at all three divisions, right now, in the blue right now, you really got to pay attention to Bloomfield Hills. That win against Troy is a statement win for them. Rochester was 2-1. They had wins against Waterford Kettering. You got to remember the other one. It's not on the tip of my tongue right now, but they had that tough loss to Macomb Lance Cruise North in the OAA MAC Challenge over at Rochester this past Saturday. And then you look at Royal Oak. I still don't know with them, considering what happened to them against Madison Heights Lampier. Berkeley, they just did not look very good against Troy. They did not look good at all. And obviously, you kind of look at it. And to make it worse, that game was at home. That was at Berkeley. Because Troy had a building problem. So that they had to get fixed. I hope it's fixed over there now. But still, you really, and then you look at Southfield. Southfield, I don't know much. And they had that tough loss to Troy. So Southfield's a team that's really, I don't know much about them yet. To get a good reading on them. Really don't. Ferndale University out to a 2-0 start. They're getting better each day. They're getting better. Stony Creek is right now at 2-1. You got to look at, obviously, what Coach Jeff Owens done with that team. They took a lot of lumps. Could this be the time they turn things around quick? So that is the big question I have with Stony Creek. Bloomfield Hills, I mentioned earlier. I would say right now the best team in that division right now would be, honestly, I would say Bloomfield Hills right now. Well, then Pontiac, you're coming off that tough loss to Avondale. They had a bounce back win the other night. So they're 1-1 right now. So if I had to say my best team right now in that division right now, I would have to say complete it's Stony Creek, because they have the pieces. Pontiac's got to be right there. So does Bloomfield Hills. They've also got to be in that conversation. Rochester is a dark horse in the blue. They are a dark horse. And there's a reason why I have Rochester probably my dark horse in that division. Max Mall, Jacob Tandy. I mean, a lot of experience. A lot of questions, though, with Rochester, though. A lot of questions. So I want to say right now, the best team in that division right now is, I think the best team is Bloomfield Hills, but the most complete is Stony Creek. In the red, I would say right now the best team in that division, it looks like it's Groves, but I just think, obviously Groves has got a complete team. They got questions with depth. I don't know if I trust them in a depth game. I really don't know if I do. Ferndale's a very deceptive 0-3. Clarkson right now is 2-0. They're sitting really nice right now. I'll be curious to see how they do when they get in the league play. North Farmington's been very suspect. Didn't look great against. Lost to Troy Martin Luther King. Had to survive against Farmington. Had to survive against they survived their D zone against Hamtramck. I mean, still. I mean, they had to survive that. Avondale's looking really good right now. Obviously, bringing in Jacoby Loris has been a big impact for Avondale to go along with their guard play. Right now, when I look at the Yellow Jackets right now, I think they could be in that conversation with the way they're playing right now. But you also got to look at the competition Avondale's played. And there's still some questions. I mean, the Ann Arbor Skyline's a solid team. But right now, when I look at the way that Coach Jared Thomas has his team rolling right now, they're clicking on all cylinders right now. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, we'll see how it goes with them. And I think, it'll be interesting to see how Avondale does. And then Adams, you just don't know with Adams. You really don't know. I mean, they have that win against Lake Orion, but they have some really rough losses. I think they lost to Chippewa too, and I think they're 1-3 start. I mean, Adams probably would be my most disappointing team right now because I didn't expect them to be at 1-3. So when I look at a team that I really have been just bothering me, I mean, it's a team that's really been bothering me as of late has been Adams. And, coming off that win against Lake Orion where they had to survive by 2, they just haven't been the same since that Lake Orion. They really have not been the same. And, the loss of Heritage was tough. But the one I think that really was the most bothering game has to be that loss to Stony Creek, where they lost by 16. So that was a game where if I had to pick a team that I've been really disappointed with right now, it's been Coach Isaiah Novak's team. And, you can't explain, especially with Adams, considering, that they got off to an emotional win against Lake Orion. And now they're really struggling. I don't know what's going on over there. I really don't know what the issues are. I really don't know what the questions are with Adams. And, for them to be 1-3 is just mind-boggling to see where this team's been, considering, where they've been. Just hard to see. Really hard to explain. Really hard to figure out, what Adams is right now. So they're sitting at 1-3 right now. Probably my most disappointing team right now has been Adams. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Ferndale, very deceptive 0-3. Give him a pass. So give Coach Juan Rickman's team a pass there. White, Athens struggling a little bit. Troy's been 1-1. 2-1 actually. Knocked off Berkeley, knocked off A&T. Really tough loss to Bloomfield Hills. Lake Orion, give them a pass. Murders row of schedule, playing the likes of Adams, Macomb, Dakota, and Clarkston, especially Dakota and Clarkston. Those are two very tough matchups. They still got to play Canton. They still got to play Novi. And then you got Stony Creek still on that schedule. That is just extremely difficult. So, we'll see how it goes. Troy right now sits at 2-1. You look at Harper Woods is off to a good start. Oak Park hasn't played a game yet, which has been really mind-boggling. Been big question mark here for Oak Park since they haven't played a game yet. I really can't judge Oak Park considering where they're at right now. I really can't. So we'll see what happens there. But when I look at the division right now, despite this team being 0-3, Seahome's been playing really well. I mean, getting better each day. And then you look at, so Seahome will be your Farmington's in the conversation as well. But when I look at this division, I'd say, everybody's going to say, well, is Oxford the best team in the division? Is, Farmington's that team that's always a team that's looking for respect. If I had to rank the division right now as is, honestly, I would say Lake Orion right now will be 1, despite their 0-3 record. Then I would have to say Farmington is in that conversation. I think Farmington right now is a 2. It's the second best team in that division. Followed by Troy, then Oxford. Now, people are going to say, well, you dissing Oxford here. I mean, here's the thing. The schedule. Look at your strength of schedule. I said this earlier in the show. Your strength of schedule is the reason why. Until you play a team from the red, you know what I mean? I mean, Lake Orion's had your number as well. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see how Oxford does. It'll be really interesting. Right now, that strength of schedule is not really that impressive. When you look at the schedules like Lake Orion, you look at the schedule like Farmington. I mean, Farmington, they played North really tough. You look at Troy. I mean, Troy, playing A&T, Bloomfield Hills has been really impressive. I mean, so I would put Oxford basically ahead of Troy right now. So I would say right now, if I do a strength of schedule component right now, obviously Lake Orion, Farmington, I'd put Sealam in that conversation. Because they played Groves earlier in the week. Then Oxford, then Troy, then Harper Woods, Troy Athens. I mean, that's really what it is right now. I mean, Farmington's a team that's got my attention right now. Farmington's a team that I think could make some serious noise. They pretty much could. The way they're playing, that says a lot right now. That says a lot when you look at a team like Farmington. Now Lake Orion, yes, they're 0-3, but the schedule they played has been just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, seriously, when you look at this Lake Orion team, they played a ridiculous non-conference schedule. So, we'll see how it goes. So, my take, Oak Park, I can't judge them yet. So really, that's the team I really can't judge is Oak Park, considering they haven't played a game yet. So we'll see how it goes. We're going to see how it goes. Let's go to the girls' game now. I mean, obviously, we had the first week of the season for girls. Ferndale's off to a good start, blowing out people. Like I said, I still can't judge them yet. I really can't. West Bloomfield had a really rough loss to Saginaw Heritage. They had a really rough loss. They lost 79-53. It was stunning. Really stunning. But, you know, there's going to be a transition period for the players, and they're going to have to go through that. It's going to have to happen throughout the year. Stony Creek had a really rough loss to Walled Lake Northern. Really, really rough loss to them. I give Coach Josh Pease a lot of credit. Hung in there with Stony. They hung in there, and they beat a heck of a Stony Creek team. They did. Oxford, coming off a tough loss, Macomb, Dakota, had no issue with Dame Lake City. I think they're sitting at 1-1 right now. So right now, it looks like they're figuring some things out a little bit over there. Lake Orion sits at 1-2 right now. Did not look very good against Avondale at all. They just did not look very good at all. And I think when I look at Lake Orion, obviously Izzy Walensky, big part of this team. But, you know, when you don't have your full-fledged team, you don't have a Charlotte Pavlowski for a game. She missed the Avondale game. Brooke Armstrong and Elizabeth Crawford, both of them missed the last two games. I think if you're Coach Bob Bridges, you know, if getting your full team back is going to be a huge deal for this team. It's going to be a huge deal. But they've got to take care of the basketball. They've got to play. They got to play, they've got to turn things around. They really do. But if they get their whole team back, you know what I mean? Who knows? Who knows what'll happen? But it's clear as day that for Lake Orion, the defense has to carry them. Their defense has to carry them. I really thought in the Brighton game, they played much better defensively despite losing that game. They played much better. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But when I look at the Red right now, I would say that division right now, you know, and then you have Clarkson. Clarkson's coming off a tough schedule, tough stretch. They lost to Flint Powers. They had a heartbreaking loss to Heartland. But they blew out Traverse City Central. So they're sitting at 1-2. Clarkson's played a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong. Coach Aaron Goodnow's played a tough schedule. I mean, Eliana Roback did not play well against Heartland. I mean, Brooklyn Coverts has really stepped up. I think Brooklyn Covert's probably the most consistent player on that team at Clarkson. I think she is. People are going to say, well, what about Eliana Roback? I think, honestly, and I'm going to be honest with you, I think the heart and soul of that team is Brooklyn Covert. And that says a lot. I mean, you have Ellery Hernandez. She's played well for Clarkson. She's played well. Elia Morgan's played well. I think that for Clarkston right now, it's just staying the course. Really is. So we'll see how that one goes. So when I look at the division right now, Ferndale right now is the early edge, but we'll know a lot about them. I would say right now, I would have to take West Bloomfield, still my second best team in there right now. I would say Stony Creek, then Lake Orion, then Oxford. That's my early indicators in the red. In the white, Seaholm's playing a tough schedule, so I'm giving them a pass here. I mean, despite the record, I think Seaholm's fine. Royal Oak, you know, when I look at them, they haven't played the toughest of schedules yet. They really haven't. So it'll be interesting to see how Royal Oak responds. So it'll be really interesting to see how they do. So we'll see how that goes with them. Rochester had a nice win the other night. Still got some question marks. When I look at Harper Woods and the Blues, got some questions. A&T, they still love their offense. Defense is a question mark. Groves to me, they're getting better. They're scoring more. J.C. Roy's really playing good. Harlan's been playing good for Groves. So I think when I look at Groves, it's a team that could really, they're going to be fine. There's a lot of questions with them. So we'll see with them, and I think that we'll see with them. And I think there's some question marks with Groves. But right now, I think they're fine right now. So when I look at the division right now, and then Blue Bay Hills, tough loss to St. Mary's. So when I look at the white right now, I would have to say Seaholm 1, Royal Oak 2, Rochester 3, Groves 4, Blue Bay Hills 5 right now. When I look at that division, Blue, I'd say Avondale, Berkeley. Avondale, they've been playing. It's been playing really well. Berkeley, Avondale's got that win against Lake Orion, which is huge for them at the moment. Berkeley, I think right now it's the second best team. Adams, we know the injury to Faith Zolas has been huge for them. Troy Athens has been an odd team to figure out. Troy, of course, I forgot to mention Troy in the white, coming out that tough loss to Lake Orion. I think they'll be fine. They got a tough one coming out with Clarkston. So when I look at the white overall, I still think it's Seaholm, Royal Oak, Troy, Groves, and then Harper Woods, and then Blue Bay Hills. Groves and Blue Bay Hills. So we'll see how that one goes. The blue, mentioned Avondale, Berkeley, Adams is my big question mark. A&T, still got the same issues. Followed by Athens. So we'll see how that one goes. And then the gold division, and the North Farmington, I watched them, and yikes. They're a young group, but this did not look very good. So North's going to struggle this year for sure. And then in the gold, you got Farmington, Oak Park. Ferndale University did not. I mean, they looked better. Scored 12 points. Pontiac, haven't seen much with them yet. So we'll see what happens. I mean, like I said, it's really early. We've just started girls basketball. We're a week into the season. So there's going to be a lot of question marks for every team going forward. So we'll see what happens with everybody around the league. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, we're in the heart of the winter season. Doesn't feel like winter out there, but it'll soon be white. It'll soon turn snowy. I will have the classics coming up on the blog at Saganaway4650 at blogspot.com for latest information around the OAA. Have not heard any football news as of late. So we'll see what happens going forward there as we look at within the heart of football season. All right, we're going to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog at Saganaway4650 at blogspot.com for the latest information around the OAA. So we'll keep an eye on the blog as well. I did not release my rankings this week because of the games from Sunday. I know that the D-Zone's got another classic coming up. I think this will be over at Clarkston. They did have their classic for boys over at Avondale. So we'll see what happens going forward. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to sign off here. Make sure you follow the blog at Sagabay46 with you at blogspot.com. Take care. God bless. And I will see y'all next week. All right. Take care. And God bless all.